Welcome everyone to the People's Debate League. I'm your host, Vincent. And today, this week, I want to go into the four characters or the four areas of religion. There's many more, but I'm going to start with this first person. His name is Pythagoras. And many of you who study math know about Pythagoras' theorem. I want to go into his research and what he was about. It's going to be very brief article I received from Encyclopedia Britannica on Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras had influenced Plato, who influenced Aristotle. I think his name is called Aristotle. Sorry, forgive me. And it talks about this article, it talks about his influence on philosophy and religion, and his followers. It talks about his disciples and that he possibly could have been an Egyptian pretending to be Greek. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But I want to say this. I've said before that there's math and religion. I did not know how deep this rabbit hole went. So I'm going to dig and see if I can pull the rabbit out of the hole. Here it is. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and read it because I'm not going to trust that video thing to actually play because normally it doesn't. Here it is, Encyclopedia. Pythagoras. Definition by Joshua L. Mark. Published on 23 May 2019. Here it is. Pythagoras. L circa 571 to C circa 597 BCE. Was a Greek philosopher whose teachings emphasized the immortality and migration of the soul, reincarnation, virtuous human behavior toward all living things, and the concept of number as truth in the mathematics not only cleared the mind, but also for an objective, comprehensive of reality. He is best known in the modern day for the Pythagoras theorem, a mathematical formula which states that the square of the hypotenuse of a right angle is equal to the sum of the square on the other two sides. This formula has been applied to measuring distance, space, for example, and planning and executing the construction of a building. Although attributed to Pythagoras by ancient writers, modern scholars cite evidence from Babylonian texts written sometime before Pythagoras, which discuss the same formula on at least one very similar. Almost nothing is known of Pythagoras' life, even though later writers said such a such as Dionysius Laertius L. circa 180-240 CE attempt to put together biographies based on the stories, fragments from the earlier works. Latest biography of Pythagoras is the most complete, but unfortunately, the author never cites the source he drew from, and so it is impossible to corroborate many of these claims. Pythagoras' influence on later philosophers and the development of the Greek philosophy generally was enormous. Plato, L. circa 428-427, 348, 347 BCE, represents Pythagoras in a number of his works, and Pythagoras' thoughts as understood and relayed by the ancient writers is underlying from underlying form in Plato's philosophy. Plato, famous student Aristotle, L. 384-322 BCE, also incorporated Pythagorean teachings into his own thought, and Aristotle's works would influence philosophy, poets, theologians, among many others, from his time through the Middle Ages, 478, 1300 CE, into the modern day. Although Pythagoras remains a mysterious figure in inequity, therefore, He also stands as one of the most significant in the development of philosophical and religious thoughts. Life's works. What is known of Pythagoras comes from later writers piecing together fragments of his life from contemporaries and students. It is known that Pythagoras was born on the island of Samos off Asia Minor, where his ancestors had settled after leaving Phyllis, a city in northwest Peloponnese after the Civil War. There were there in 380 BC, he received a quality education as his father, a mind searches, his father, in the searches, was a wealthy merchant. He may have studied in Babylon and in Egypt, and possibly had the best Greek tutors of time. Although all of this is speculative, however, as the information comes from later writers who accepted uncritically that others wrote about him, if there was an author, if there was an authoritative biography of Pythagoras or origin works by the man himself, they are long lost. Scholars forever, scholar Forrest E. Barrett comments, Pythagoras was associated with so many legends that a few scholars dare to say much about his life, his personality, or even his teachings, without adding that we cannot be sure our information is accurate, that there was a man named Pythagoras who found the section called the Pythagoreans. We need not to doubt among the witnesses of his historical of his historicity was his young contemporary Heresitis, who thought ill of him. Nevertheless, is notoriously difficult to distinguish between the teachings of Pythagoras himself and those of his followers, the, the Pythagoreans. The historicity of Pythagoras has been questioned. Heraclius, LC 500 BCE, as Baird notes, considered Pythagoras highly overrated and another contemporary. The visionary uh, Xenophanes uh, colophon LC 570 to LC 478 BCE, mocked Pythagoras for his belief in reincarnation. The difficulty in the discussion of Pythagoras is in trying to separate the actual man and his teachings from the mythology which surrendered him even in his own lifetime. Pythagorean's belief. As noted, Pythagorean writes, if he wrote anything, have survived in owning to the secrecy he demanded of his students, the specific of his teachings were carefully kept. The philosopher Porphyry, LC 234 to 2C 305 CE, who wrote a later biography of Pythagoras, noted, when he taught his disciples, no one can say for certain, for they maintain a remarkable silence, all the same. The following became generally known. First, he said that the soul is immortal. Second, that migrates that it migrates into other kinds of animals. Third, that the same events are repeated in cycles. Nothing being new in the strict sense. And finally, that all things with souls should be regarded as acum. Pythagoras seemed to have been the first to introduce these beliefs into Greece. Robinson 58. The Greek historian Herodotus, 1C 484 to 425 slash 413 BCE, alludes to Pythagoras, although famously refused to name him in this article. Moreover, Egyptians are the first to have maintained a doctrine that the soul of man is immortal, and that when the body perishes, it enters into another animal that is being born at the same time. And when it has been the complete round of the creatures of the dry land and the sea and of the air, it enters again into the body of a man. The birth and its cycle is completed. In 3,000 years, there are some Greeks who have adopted this doctrine, some in former times and some in later, as it is, as it were, their own invention in the names I know, but refrain from writing down. Book 1, 12, 3. Like the Pythagoreans theorem, like the Pythagorean theorems, Pythagoras concept of the transmigration of soul may also have been borrowed. Scholar George G. M. James, in his work, Stolen Legacy, the Egyptian origin of Western philosophy, pointed out that all the great pre Socratic philosophers either studied in Egypt or in the Egyptian mystery school of Asia Minor. James 9, Thales, LC 585 BCE, considered the first Western philosopher student in the Babylon and the two others of the most significant pre-Socratic and examined their 1C 610 to C 546 BCE and Anaxaminus IC 546 BCE. Both traveled extensively and had access to the mysteries schools which focused on Egyptian religious thoughts. It is more than likely then that Pythagoras thought was actually Egyptian spirituality transplanted to the Greek. Pythagoras' famous secrecy may have been intended to keep this fact from circulating too widely and discrediting him as an original thinker. He is said to have been quite charismatic and a powerful public speaker, and it would have undermined his authority if his philosophy was revealed as simply prepackaged Egyptian belief. Whether he concealed his teachings for this reason or some others cannot be ascertained, it is possible he simply felt the masses would not understand or appreciate his ideas. Whether the reason, the secrecy added greatly to his mystique and reputation. His belief in the immortality of the soul and reincarnation led naturally to a vegetarian lifestyle with an emphasis on doing no harm to any other living thing, and thus asceticism, which is he also demanded of his followers, elevated his reputation as a holy man even further. Diagnosis, Herodotus described his diet and habits. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Actually, I'm going to read this last quote by him. Okay, some say that he was satisfied with honey alone or a bit of on honeycomb or bread. He did not touch wine during the day or for a treat, vegetables boiled or raw. Seafood, what he ate, but rarely. His robe, which was white, spotted, and bedclothes, which were also white, were of wool. For linen, he had not yet reached those parts. He was never observed to leave himself or to have intercourse or to be drunk. He used to avoid laughter and all pandering to scurrilous jokes and vulgar stories. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. There's a lot more here. But I think I covered what I wanted to cover. And one thing I think I'll correct that I'll say, but I didn't think they said anything about him being Egyptian, but that he did agree with some Egyptian concepts, some Egyptian belief systems. But it does tell you his influence on religion and philosophy, as I stated. And he had disciples. And I have another thought, but I'm not going to share that thought yet. I'm not going to share. I'm going to get more information to share that before I share that thought. But I have a sneaky suspicion about something, and I got to get more information to share that thought. So I'm going to leave you guys with this information on Pythagoras, brief history on him. There's so much more for you guys to read, but I don't want to bore everyone to death more than what I have. I also want to apologize if I mispronounced some of the names, some of the words that are in the story. But again, I appreciate you guys being here, taking the time to listen to me and watching the video. So if you can, please like, share, subscribe to the video. And thanks for everything. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.